this morning. Everybody, if you got a handout, should have a handout in there. If not, there are some extras back there. And there are some pins around if you don't have a pin. We're going to be looking into Mark 6 this morning. Familiar story. Our text is going to start at Mark 6, verse 30. But I'm going to start by kind of telling the backstory. So Jesus had sent out the disciples to preach, to heal, to cast out demons. And so he sent them out in groups of 2, and they traveled and told them, don't take any provisions. Just go and stay with someone who welcomes you, and then go on to the next town if you're not accepted, that sort of thing. At the beginning of verse 6 in chapter 6. And so the disciples had just been out and had apparently come back together, where we start in verse 30, because the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. So I imagine that was a pretty high moment spiritually. They had gone out, Jesus had sent them out, and through his power, they had preached repentance. Probably people believed, people listened, they had healed people, they cast out demons. And so I'm sure they were ecstatic. I would be, to come back and to tell Jesus, this is what, wait till you hear about this one, wait till you hear about this person and this healing and that sort of thing. They all came back and they reported to him all they had done and taught. And verse 31 says, then because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. So they're back with Jesus, and wherever that is, there are so many people, maybe people who, from the different villages and towns the disciples had been to, maybe they're coming back, they're following the disciples, they're coming by, they want to see Jesus, they want to see the disciples, they want to hear more. People are coming and going, and Jesus is there, and it's busy, busy, busy. The disciples had just been traveling, and I'm sure are physically worn out, even though it was probably a spiritual high moment. So Jesus says to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. All right, so your first blank there, number 1, is Jesus cares. He knew the needs of his disciples. He cares about them. They had not even had a chance to eat. He said, come away with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. So in my thinking, maybe they left early. Maybe that was the end of a day, and they said, next morning, we're going to go. And so they left early, maybe at first light. They're getting the boat ready. And apparently people saw them, or maybe they told somebody along the way what they were doing, where they were going, and word spread that the disciples and Jesus were on a boat headed to whatever this remote place was. I don't know what the setting was like, but obviously it was somewhere that people maybe knew, and they knew, okay, Jesus is going over there with his disciples. He's just going to be there. There's nothing else there. We can go meet him there. If some famous person we found out, if we cared to go, found out they were just going to show up at Addenbrook Park this afternoon, we might all go. We'd be like, hey, that's a cool place. If they had been selling tickets for months at the arena downtown, we might not would buy tickets depending on who it was, but if somebody was just going to be there, that might be cool just to go and whatever. And much more than that, this is Jesus, and Jesus is going to go, and so people began going to the place where Jesus and his disciples were heading. It says in verse 33, but many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. So maybe, too, these are people who were in a town that the disciples had been through, heard about Jesus, seen what the disciples had done, and said, hey, that looks like, Andrew and James. Jesus must be in that boat with them. We should go where they're going, and maybe we can see and talk to Jesus. And word spread, and people ran on foot from where they were to get there ahead of them to the remote place where Jesus was going. So in verse 34, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. So your second blank is Jesus is compassionate. He saw them like sheep without a shepherd. They came there, they were hungry, they wanted to hear what he had to say, wanted to know more. Like I said, maybe they'd been heard the disciples, maybe they'd been where Jesus had been through, and they wanted more. And many people from many towns, and later we find out they number about 5,000 men, were there. So Jesus had compassion and began teaching them. So if they left early in the morning, I don't know how long it would take to get there. Obviously, there was multiple towns and villages around of some manner, and it took people time to run there to get ahead of them, but people could run there on foot and get ahead of them in the boat. So I don't know how long it took them to cross to where they were going, but maybe they got there mid-morning. I don't know if they took their time, if they rode really fast, but maybe they got there mid-morning, and Jesus began teaching these people. And apparently taught them, if it was morning, I don't know for sure, but if it was, taught them all day. In verse 35, it says, by this time it was late in the day. And it says in the verse before, he began teaching them many things. So Jesus taught them many things. And then the next verse is, by this time it was late in the day. And so obviously some time had passed. And so they'd been there teaching, and I'm imagining the disciples are in whatever manner maybe helping Jesus teach, maybe shouting out where people can hear. Maybe they're shuffling people through in group. I don't know. But I speculate that the disciples still have not eaten, because they went away, and part of it was they did not even have a chance to eat. And as soon as they got there was this crowd, and Jesus began teaching them. So it's all day long, and the disciples are helping, and I can just imagine, one of the disciples like, man, I'm hungry. Like, James, are you hungry? And like, yeah. When we traveled, he told us not to take food. We stayed. People fed us, but I was so excited in a hurry to get somewhere else. I skipped a couple suppers, and I really haven't eaten that much, and all that traveling, and so excited I couldn't eat a ton, and I'm pretty hungry. And I began asking the other disciples maybe, and then they're all hungry, and well, like they got thinking, well, we've been here all day. These people are probably hungry. And so they thought, man, these people Philip, you're from around here, where can they go? It's like, well, they're going to have to travel, to some different villages in the countryside, and they're going to have to go to find food to buy. And it's like, well, we better tell Jesus. Maybe he doesn't know this area, and maybe he doesn't know, what's going to have to happen for these people to go get food. So in verse 35, by this time it was late in the day, so the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place, and it's already very late. So it'd been, probably the whole day late, probably still some kind of daylight. I don't know, coming to dusk. I'm not sure, but they said in verse 36, excuse me, send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. And they're probably sitting there thinking and so we can eat, get them out so we can eat and go get something to eat. And Jesus answered, you give them something to eat. And I can almost imagine, my response would be like, what? like a Walmart probably doesn't, well, they might have enough food to feed 5,000 people. But, that's a lot. How can we possibly feed, even if we all had full, baskets of food, we couldn't feed 5,000 people, and how much money, you're good with numbers, how much money would it take, and that's like a half year's wages. And then I'd be thinking and plus we'd have to travel to these towns or villages, we'd have to go, we'd have to buy it, we'd have to, how are we supposed to haul back enough food for 5,000 men and whatever women and children may be there? How is this even, us feed them? So they said, that would take more than a half year's wages. Are we going to spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? So Jesus asked, how many loaves do you have? Which the disciples had been with Jesus. They had just been sent out. They had just healed people. They knew who Jesus was. He could do miracles. But he asked, how many loaves do you have? And maybe their gut reaction, not enough, we don't have very many. In the next part, it says, Jesus says, go and see. It's like, all right, come on, guys, and so they go, and they try to find whatever food they can, and they come up with 5 loaves and 2 fish. So when they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. And I'm just thinking maybe one disciple's holding this and he's thinking, this would feed me, and maybe, me and Andrew could split it. We traveled together, maybe we could split I don't know about everybody else, well, Jesus is probably hungry. Maybe we should just let Jesus eat this, we still should send everyone away. And Jesus directed them to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. And in verse 40, so they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. And taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Now, I don't know. Some of the disciples maybe anticipated a miracle. What's Jesus going to do? Is it going to rain bread from the sky? Is it going to, like in the children of Israel days when manna from heaven? Is it just going to start dumping, loaves of bread down? What's going to happen? What is Jesus going to do here? And others maybe a little more like, what's Jesus going to do here? And not sure. But he gives them, it says, verse 41, taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute them to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them. So I don't know. I have an imagination, and I've thought of all sorts of ways that you could maybe do this. I don't know if you pass a loaf of bread and take a bite and give it to the next person, and that bite grows back. If somehow Jesus broke the bread, handed half, and the other half grew back. I don't know, maybe there was a basket with a cloth over it, and Jesus kept just, pulling stuff out of it, and it was like Mary Poppins' purse, that stuff just keeps coming out of. But obviously, however it is, I saw this, and I don't know what size they were, but if there are 5 of these and 5,000, yeah, I don't think we can make it work. So one disciple, maybe he gets his piece of bread and it's like, oh, all right, I'm starving. This bread smells so good. And here's my group of 50 people, bon appetit, and he gives them the bread and comes back and gives them another one. I'm so hungry, and gives them the bread and goes back. How far is this bread going to go? And then he realizes maybe, wait, I've just fed 3 groups of 50 people. And they're still what's happening? Comes back looking, and I don't know if, Jesus kept individually giving them the bread, if their bread just kept multiplying. I don't know. But they fed 5,000. Jesus did a miracle, but the third blank there, Jesus uses others to do his work. The disciples found the food, brought what they had to Jesus, and he took it, and then they fed the 5,000. Verse 42, they all ate and were satisfied. So they didn't just take a nibble, like it looks like some child, hopefully not mine, took out of this. They didn't just take a nibble. Even right now, I was sitting there and my stomach's hungry. Some of you might be waiting, for me to be done so you can go eat, and you're hungry. And if I gave you a piece of bread and was like, here, take a bite, and oh, wasn't that good? Aren't you satisfied now? You probably wouldn't be, They'd come, they'd run to hear Jesus, and got there, and they were there all day, and apparently without eating, and, it says they were satisfied. So in whatever that means, maybe they didn't stuff themselves, but they ate enough to have a full belly, to be satisfied. So there was enough to feed all of them. The fourth blank is Jesus is big enough. And then, just to add icing to the cake, 43 says, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. Now, I did a little research on the baskets and the 12 and the number, and it just so happens, 12 disciples, 12 baskets. Maybe these were baskets that they carried their gear in. They were going away. Maybe they threw some stuff in it, put it in the boat, and when they had to gather the leftover food, they dumped their stuff out and got the baskets. Anyway, it adds up. The disciples were the ones who collected the leftovers, and there were 12 left. So at the end of it, each disciple had a basket full of leftovers. So not only did Jesus feed the 5,000, he also fed his disciples, because I'm pretty sure they aren't going to miss this. They may have served the others first, but there were 12 baskets left over, and they had not eaten. The disciples ate. And I'm imagining Jesus ate. So Jesus is big enough to not only feed the 5,000 and to use the disciples to do so, he's also able to feed the disciples, which the 5 loaves and 2 fish probably would not have done just by themselves in the disciples' hands. Verse 44, the number of men who had eaten was 5,000. And another interesting thing I thought of in the dividing up of bread is it says the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. So however the miracle turned out, there was not any whole loaves or fish left. I don't think Jesus had anything sitting there waiting like, oh, okay, that's it. Oh, we still have these whole bread, whole fish. It was literally enough, but more than enough passed out. It wasn't like the 5 loaves and 2 fish were still miraculously in the basket or wherever they were. It was leftovers. And I just thought that was interesting, that in whatever manner of passing out the bread, it was perfect, and then some, and the leftovers. But Jesus is big enough. John 1:3 says, "Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." And Colossians 1:17 says, "He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." So if you really grasp that, it's no surprise that Jesus can just make bread do whatever he wants. But in that moment, the disciples might not have known that. So they'd seen Jesus do miracles, but they were hungry. And sometimes when you're hungry, you don't think straight. And so it's no surprise that the one who in him all things hold together can just multiply bread and fish and have leftovers, and it's nothing. Jesus is big enough. Number 5 is God has no limits or limitations. God has no limits or limitations. Matthew 6:25 says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" And verse 31 says, "So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." Which is what the crowd did. They, if it was early in the morning, saw Jesus, or if they were maybe in a little further town or village, saw the boat, saw the disciples. Maybe they saw crowds running through. A crowd of 5,000 is quite the number. Running through their town. Where's everybody going? Oh, Jesus is going to, such and such area over here. And, oh, Jesus, I want to go. Drop what you're doing. Close the shop. Put the clothes sign. Tie the donkey up. Set down whatever their jobs were doing, whatever they were starting. They left everything and didn't bring food, apparently, and left everything and ran to meet Jesus. They were seeking Jesus. And I thought this was funny. It wasn't like they knew Jesus was going to declare all foods clean and there was going to be a bacon dinner afterwards. They were going to hear Jesus. They just wanted to meet Jesus, to see Jesus, apparently they were like, here we are, And Jesus taught them, and it was enough that they stayed all day, even though they were hungry. They could have left at any time to go get food, I would imagine. And another thing is, these weren't poor people. They clearly had the means. The disciples knew they had the means. They could go buy food, whether that was they had money always on them if people carried their money, whether it was credit type system, whatever it was. They weren't just poor people that couldn't afford food. No, Jesus fed them because they couldn't eat. No, they had a means, but they sought Jesus. And then on top of that, he said, I can do a big miracle and feed you too. He can feed both soul and body. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So number 6 is, he is the same God today. God has not changed. He's the same God. So there are two sides to this. Well, there's multiple sides to this, but I'm going to say two sides to this. Jesus, you can see a need, or Jesus can show you a need. And you can, there's lots of needs, and a lot of times they are bigger than we are. But they aren't bigger than God is. And Jesus asks us, what do you have? You give them something to eat. You do this. And you say, well, I can't. That's impossible. And he says, what do you have? And Jesus can take what you have, and then he can use you to bless others, to help others. He is big enough, and he can use you and what you have. All he asks is, what do you have? And sometimes you might have to go and see. You might have to think about it. What can I do? What do I have? Or you could be on the other side of this. You could have heard of Jesus, be seeking Jesus, and you need to know that you need to run to Jesus like the crowds did. Sometimes that may mean stopping everything you're doing, not caring about food for the day or your work for that day, and running to Jesus, reading your Bible, and trusting that he will teach you things. And then you might need to find someone that Jesus is using to help you. Jesus uses others, and that may be not maybe just help in something or a meal, but maybe counseling, spiritual help. And trust that God can take care of what you need spiritually, and God will teach you. Run after him. And then with that, he can also take care of your most basic need, feeding you. And if you trust God, sometimes it's, I put that off later, I don't have time right now, or that would take a lot of energy, or that whatever. If you're at that place, you need to stop what you're doing, put everything down, run to Jesus, and trust him. And on the other side, we need to trust God to take what we have. We need to give him what we have and let him use us. That's the cool part, is we get to be used to help others. The disciples got to feed people. The disciples got to go out to these groups of people and there's still more bread. It's still coming. Going back and getting more. Jesus uses his followers to then bless others, to show them his love and his power. So what do you have that you can give God? He is the same God today. Isaiah 40:28 says, do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. So Jesus cares. He's compassionate. He uses others to do his work. He's big enough for any problem we have. God has no limits or limitations, and he's the same today. He taught the people. He fed the people. He fed the disciples. And then the cool part, kind of cool, interesting part to me is then he sent them away. It very next says, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat, and he dismissed the crowd. So it wasn't necessarily even Jesus is I got to keep him here by more food. He He taught them. He's getting ready to leave. He fed them, and he said, on your way. And I think we need to let God do that in our lives and see how we can help others and give to God. And that's what I have this morning. So if you will stand with me, we will pray and be dismissed. Dear Jesus, we praise and thank you that you are able to use what we have to meet the needs of others, and that you choose to use us to do it. Thank you for that, Lord. Thank you that we get to be a part, to be your hands and feet, and that you will meet our needs as well along the way as we, through you, meet the needs of others. Show us how we can put this into practice, Lord, how it can be applicable to our lives. Thank you for your love and your care and your compassion, that you are a compassionate God and that you never change. Be with each one of us as we go from here today, Lord. We will praise you and thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. You are dismissed.